Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and it is Wednesday, May 26th. This is your end of day recap. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. This video is for education purposes only. If the video is a bit blurry, just wait a little bit. YouTube takes a while to render the high def version of the video. So if it's fuzzy, can close it, wait a little while, and it should be clear as day once they're done rendering. So, theme of the day, a couple things definitely stood out. I can put a couple other themes in here. It seems like there was a number of things, and we'll try to cover those things here fairly quickly in today's end of day video. But number one, really the small caps, micro caps, really big day. You could see that I've got them highlighted here. The small caps were up 1.9%. Not much out of, if you look at the Dow, completely flat. I used the term earlier on Twitter, flat as a pancake. That was the Dow today. Not any major move throughout the session either in Dow stocks, and S&P the same story, right? No movement whatsoever after the open, and up 20 basis points. So if it wasn't I don't want to say that. I don't want to say if it wasn't for the small caps, because there was some other things, and we're going to touch upon those. But and here's what the S&P looks like, by the way, right? So a couple of things that we've talked about the last couple of days, and I'll talk quickly so that if I'm repeating some of it, it'll go by quickly. But number one, what I see is price basically all the way back to where we started the month. So if you've done well this month, right, then I would say you're a pretty good trader, because overall, even if you just sat like in an S&P fund, you outperformed. If, like I said, if you manage to kind of trade in and out of some of the things that were moving, because the S&P basically has just gone flat this month. We started to go higher, that didn't work. We started to go a little bit lower, couple dips. We really hung on to that 50-day moving average. We got back inside value, but we're having a little bit of issue breaking higher. Now, I do think that that's okay. I'm okay with that, because I view these end of months kind of difficult. Sometimes there's a little bit more selling programs at the end of the month. For some reason, this is what the institutions like to do. They like to sell some things at the end of the month and then put them right back on in the beginning of the month. So that could set up for a nice first week of June. After the holiday weekend. And the other thing that I note too is that the value area is going to be very similar to this month's value area, because once again, we haven't moved anywhere. And we talked a little bit about the shape of these volume profiles in yesterday's video, but you could see volume compression as well going on too. So I'm optimistic, right? Again, I hate to use that phrase, cautiously optimistic, but again, I'm never going to be one of those people who are just like, oh, I'm all in long and diamond hands. I'm optimistic that we can go higher, but I know where to get out, right? If it's not going to work, and I'll let the setups kind of dictate, right? And we'll come back to that in a minute regarding the setups dictate how much risk I take, and whether I'm liking the market as well. All right, so that's S&P. If you want to drill down to this 1 hour value area, again, you could see it's been another sideways week. This is really, when you look at this 1 hour chart and just look at the sideways action, it's good thing that there's other things to trade than just the S&P index, because it would be very boring if not. But you can see that the price action has been above value for the week. We'll see if we can kind of end there for the week, which again, I think is fine. Notice this today, we came back and retested the top of value as we did yesterday too, and held it quite nicely. All right, so that's that for the S&P. I'll tell you what, the Qs didn't really move too much either. They made some progress. They were up 35 basis points, but not any major big move here, and we're still kind of locked underneath that bottom of value as we knew that we would be coming upon. So it was nice to get to reclaim that 50-day moving average last week, but we're also kind of right back to where we were in the beginning of the month, and we've got that resistance right at 334.80. All right, so again, we got just a couple more days of the month, and this is still developing, but it looks like the top of value is going to be right around 332. So if we can manage to stay above that 332 level, or at least if we even open up somewhere around there or not too much lower, I view that as somewhat constructive for next month. Now, let's move over to IWM. Yes, nice to see this thing, finish as it did today, up 1.8%. But it's really tough to really make any more conclusion more than that, because this thing really looks sideways to me. Right, the 50-day moving average is pretty sideways. The all the moving averages are still kind of coiled around one another. And what I said on Twitter a little while ago is that this seems to be maybe something where you can kind of earn some premium and maybe sell some iron condors, right? So sell a call spread, sell a put spread, and manage that appropriately, because eventually we will break out of a sideways pattern. But this seems quite normal to me, right? After a big move. And, I know a lot of technicians, they like to overlay one chart over another and try to draw a conclusion. But I still think looking at price is the best tool, to make, right? Rather than saying this over that and, hey, we're up at this Fibonacci line and so forth, I don't know. I've seen so many charts like that mislead, because in fact, right, there's various different things that can happen when you put together a ratio chart, right? When one outperforms another, it could mean one particular thing is going up faster than the other, or it could mean one is going up, one is going down, or it could mean they're both going down and one is just going down further. So unless you're actually putting on a long versus short, it's a really tough way to kind of do your analysis, but that's what those ratio charts are really for. When you to go long one thing and go short the other, to try to earn that outperformance. All right, and I guess it's a good visualization tool, but I see just an awful lot of those ratio charts being used. IWC, which is microcaps, right? Again, kind of the same thing. I see it very sideways. I don't really see that much of a trade, because one day it's up, one day it's down. So just kind of, the same thing that we've been doing in the S&P is basically been going sideways, but still, not completely no price action. It's just, whatever we do, it seems like we're reverting right back to that, middle of value as well as 50-day moving average. All right, so that's my thought on that. And I'm 8 minutes into the video, and we kind of get out of the boring stuff at this point. But that's really what the mover was today. The VIX was down 7% for the day. I see it closing back below 17.5. I think though that's also a potentially good sign, right? We've talked about how the VIX has been making lower highs, right? I think we kind of talked about that in Friday's video, that every time this VIX has been going up the last couple weeks, right? Every time we get an episode of volatility, it's been a lower high, right? Even this one here, which looked like we hadn't gotten an episode of volatility since all the way back in March, still did not break this this area. This one too, back in the middle of the month, right, lower than this. I thought that was pretty telling, right? Even though it felt a little bit difficult at times, at those particular 2 days, but the volatility was telling us something other in the VIX. All right, so let's go back to, let's look at some sectors. We'll talk about some individual names. We'll talk about how I traded this, but also the meme stocks were big today. What I talked about in yesterday's video, just a little bit of a continuation, is I don't really understand how there's so much short interest in things like GameStop and things like AMC, but I get it. I understand why there's focus there. It worked previously to go after high short interest names. Why wouldn't it work again? and it seems like it's doing that, right? And it's causing, I guess, some shorts to cover. But I just don't understand why anybody would be that stubborn and try to make money in these things where you know that there's such passionate investors on the other side of the shorts. That's not a trade that I would even think to be taking. Considering how passionate this group of traders is, right? I get a notification from Bloomberg, right? There's a email that I get once, or a notification that I get once a day from Bloomberg about what the most cited stocks are on StockTwits, and every single day it's AMC. Every day for like the last 45 days, it's it's AMC. So would I go against that trade where everybody is just so passionate about that? No, I wouldn't. Do I view it something that I would, I really don't participate in those stocks too much. It doesn't, without getting into a lot of details, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me either, to go after just because a name has short interest to be putting a lot of money down. I understand taking a flyer on a trade here and there, and if the technical setup lines up pretty well, which it did, by the way, in GME, which was a chart that we posted in the trading room, right? This is a breakout of value. I look at multiple time frame analysis a lot, right? So this thing got, clearly above and outside of value and has just kept on going. Next VPOC up there after this Venom extension away from the value area would be 267. So it's another $25 up here. But do I understand why there's so much interest in, these couple stocks other than the short interest? No, for fundamental reasons. But hey, it is what it is. You're not going to understand everything. I've learned a long time ago that you're not going to understand every single thing that goes on in the market, right? There's a lot of stuff going on and a lot of motivated buyers and sellers. All right, so clean energy stocks, they were next on the list. I wanted to start with this before we go into the clean energy stocks, but I really thought that this was sorry, not QS. What was the name that reported, or the cyber name that reported earnings today? Why am I drawing a blank today? So if we go into hack. And it's not even ZS. Sorry, ZS. Every once in a while that happens to me. So Zscaler, right? So this we just haven't seen too many of these where a name, especially a growth name in particular, right, that had really good earnings and the name reacts like this. So perhaps it was underpositioned, and I think that's one of the conclusions that you can kind of draw away from over the last week. Why has growth rallied so much? Well, we talked about this last week. I was actually on Benzinga's pre-market show, and I talked about there's two things that could happen, right? I'll reiterate those two things, right? When we saw just a huge rotation into value stocks, right? Well, what happened to the value stocks after about a month, right? They got overbought, right? So what happens? What do portfolio managers do once they kind of hit their upside targets in, whether it's, a particular sector, a particular stock, a whole bunch of stocks, where the value stocks did very well, they take some profits and they rotate into other areas. Now, this two scenarios that I outlined was that, that I thought that we could see is taking the profits out of value stocks and either A, going into cash, or B, going into some of those growth stocks. And I think what we're seeing execute here in this month, in the last week or so, has been that move, some profit taking in value and going into some growth stocks. So seeing something like this, right, it tells me that you put up good results in some names, not every name, right? That's where there's been some lack of positioning. Perhaps you can still see these pops where they think that that the fundamentals are good going forward. Now, where did this thing stop? Well, again, when we use multi-time time frame analysis, right? 197.22 is the top of value for the month, so we stopped there. Also, if you look at this too, on the 1 hour, 195.78 was also a 1 hour virgin point of control. Shocker, right? So that's exactly where that stopped. So what I would, if you're interested in this name, I would wait until this thing maybe gets back above 198, and then you can shoot for the next virgin point of control. Now, unfortunately, again, if you're a short-term trader, if you're a longer-term trader, then you have the luxury of kind of maybe sitting and holding a name that you might like. But right now, what we're dealing with in a lot of these growth names is overhead supply, right? So where these key areas of volume are, right? High areas of volume where price really hasn't revisited before, right? So you could see in this value area, for instance, price was not even in this value area, let alone the point of control. Whenever the price doesn't pass through the point of control, it leaves behind one of these red lines, virgin point of control. Okay, so you notice on the way back up, things are going to kind of stall there, right? And they're great for like realizing where to take targets if you're, a shorter term trader. Myself, I'm a medium term swing trader, so these things really help to say, hey, I can kind of set up my trade, whenever I get into a trade, look at where my stop price is, where am I going to get stopped out of the trade if it doesn't work, and where am I going to start to begin to take profits, right? So that's really where the virgin point of controls come into play. All right, okay, so Zscaler, and then this kind of just set this this space, I don't want to say on fire because it wasn't every name in cyber, but something like CrowdStrike also is up 3.3%, and also look at where that rallied to, right up to the virgin point of control that we talked about earlier in the week. That wasn't the only theme that really played out. One of the themes too that was kind of crazy today, and I don't really have a catalyst for the clean energy. Notice that also took out a 1 hour VPOC, right? So up 4.4% and a nice move there, right? So now at this point, I would see if you can stay above that 82.50 level. Next, breaking down clean energy a little bit, but I don't know if Ford is exactly a clean energy stock, but look at what this stock is doing. Right, up over $14. Right, my next target is pretty damn close, 14.11. This is a stock that that I got long. I think it was on Friday. Right, I caught the beginning of this green candle. Right, I thought that the news was coming out pretty decently about the new F-150. I think we talked about that in Friday's video, and really nice move after a couple days of digestion, and back at it, and we'll see if this VPOC gets taken out. But that would be another nice target area for me. But it wasn't just Ford, right? Ford was up 8% for the day. If you look at some of the Chinese names, NIO was up 4.7%. XPEV was up 7.5%. And the other one, LI, was up 14%. So, I don't have the exact, I don't know. Sometimes I like to put a theme, behind or reasoning behind it. But, maybe it was just time and people just realized that cars are, a big thing right now. So, Tesla also worked pretty well. I did put on a call spread for next week. Right, I did some analysis on Tesla earlier in the week. We talked about how it finally got above the 200-day moving average, and I've got some upside targets to kind of look for, and we'll see if Tesla can do it. I know it's a very noisy stock, and by the way, we're seeing this all over the place in some of these names, right? We talked about this in yesterday's video, waiting for these things to kind of turn a little bit, then trying to actually predict when the bottom is in, right? But, this, to me, look, I see this all over the place. Left shoulder, head, right shoulder, neckline, right? So inverted head and shoulders all over the place, right? I could show you a couple other charts. So, by the way, I'm looking for I only put on a $10 wide call spread, but, if you're looking for upside targets, possibly 659, if they want to start to, if a little bit of momentum comes into Tesla, it's got a little bit of an open road, right? You don't have that many big areas of virgin point of controls that you have to worry about. So we'll see what this does in the next 2 days. 644 is one on the 5 minute time frame. So I think that's kind of interesting. But I identified this in Fubo as well, right? Now I know Fubo is in one of those names. It's more of a meme stock, right? It's high short interest. But what do you see on the daily chart? Kind of the similar type pattern: left shoulder, head, right shoulder. Okay, so there's a couple things that you can kind of do, in terms, you don't, in my opinion, don't have to go big size into one of these positions, into one of these names, but you can kind of just realize that this is going on in multiple places right now, right? If you look at the gaming stocks too, right? Well, DKNG is a little bit different, but Penn, right? If you want to look at the 1 hour chart here in Penn Gaming, right? Not exactly the perfect head and shoulders, but you can kind of see it's starting to come out of this back and forth consolidation, right? And you got 85 and 91 would be if this thing wants to revert. So that's kind of what I see going on here, and I would be a fan if some of these things can kind of continue to kind of retrace some of their levels. And meanwhile, if you look at the other sectors, which we haven't really talked about too much, one thing that I would add here is, you've had to be pretty nimble, right? I was in a lot of the steel names, not a whole bunch of steel names, but I was in a couple steel names. I was in a lot of other material names, and you have to keep tabs on those names too. You can't just get a free ride in those groups too. If they're going to rotate out of those, you have to be nimble in those positions so you can capitalize on the ones that now have momentum. But I would tell you, I would, kind of not worry too much. I've got a couple questions about, well, hey, do you think it's this group now that's going to lead the market higher? I think it's going to be a combination of things, right? Just like Ford is not necessarily a growth stock, right? We're going to continue to see different groups of strength, in my opinion. And portfolio managers, you have to remember, last year we were on lockdown. This year, we have the reopening trade, but it's not all, it's going to even itself out, right? As people start to go on vacations and so forth. If you go on a vacation, right, you're not going to be able to go on a vacation in another month per se, right? Unless you really have, a ton of time and a ton of money. People are going to kind of get that stuff out of their system, right? If you rationally think about it. So yes, everybody wants to go see a concert, go see a ball game. They're going to, I think that's going to continue to happen. But I don't think you're going to be able to go on 3 vacations, every month, right? So it's going to even itself out. So you go from one thing to the next, but I think it will kind of revert, hopefully, to the days prior to COVID, where we would have that type of market. So and I think we'll still have to be, remain on our toes and remember to do things like sell the rip a little bit, because there's going to be news stories out, right? Well, the next Fed meeting I think is the 16th of June, which is in a couple weeks, but perhaps we have a little bit of open road before we hear some new worries about inflation or whatever other story is going to be the big worry right now. But I think just kind of taking this market as it is, doing our analysis, which we do, I think that I'm liking how this new month. I'm looking forward to the first week of June, right? Continuing to do what we do with our analysis, just like we did for the month of May. Hey, we've had, and I'll do a summary, of course, when we get to the end of the month, but we've managed to really capitalize on some of the themes that we've seen, and as a group, I think we've done extremely well regarding the Tribeca Trade Group and following some of these things that have been where the relative strength has moved from place to place to place. So I'm really enthused about the new month, and I'm pretty damn proud about how we've executed over the last month. So as I mentioned, I would go over some of my trades. I tried a couple things today, and I ducked out of them. I just saw some better opportunities, and I didn't want to get bogged down. The other thing that I continue to be cognizant of is that these end of the months have been typically more difficult. So let me just talk about a few other trades here. I thought GDX had a chance to really get going today, but again, you have ideas, and if they don't, if you're not seeing a signal, or if the signal neutralizes like it did in GDX, I saw GDX this morning up above the value area, which for me 39.75. I didn't see that materializing, so I got out of the trade. Again, put the trade alert back on, and we'll see if it happens again. But right now, I don't see a reason, an active signal to be in GDX. Is it interesting that it's forming this bull flag? Absolutely. But I'll wait. I'll wait a little while for this to climb out of that. SHW, which we saw housing stocks pretty strong yesterday, but I don't know if this is going to catch major momentum. And I just saw some more interesting things on the tape right now. And again, I'm being a little bit more conservative because of where we are in the month, right? So cutting names quickly due to month end whippy price action. I tried net too. I don't think this ended up going anywhere. I tried Cloudflare. Nope, it didn't go anywhere. So that was fine because I decided to abandon that trade as well. Where's that exit? Here. That was a day trade anyway. FTNT, we've talked about this name for a while. This thing is starting to pay off, right? So again, we talked about Zscaler, but really this Fortinet, I know everybody is not really paying that much attention to this name, but it continues to really act very well. We talked about Ford. I tried a little bit of another name with that is one of these high super growth names. I got out of that one fairly quickly for again, this was a day trade, not something that I want to be in for now. Roblox, let's just talk about this for a second, right? Where this thing trade, it closed at 89. So this made such a nice move. I was in both stock, and then I added a call spread on just in case it made a real crazy move. So I was able to actually make some money on the call spread, and for now I got out of this trade. Right, I'm happy with the profits. I don't like to see a name go from up, as much as it was to kind of come back. Now, maybe maybe it just needs to put in some consolidation. This is definitely a name that I'm going to continue to watch, but for now, I'm happy to get out of this for nice profits. Just for a couple days, putting that trade on at 79 bucks, taking it off for 90. We talked about Tesla. Unity, I also decided to get out of this trade. Right, this thing closed at 96, which is okay. I took my last target at 98. I just don't know if this thing can get through resistance. Right, this was a nice trade, a nice bounce trade, but it's got to get through 98.54. Right, it's something I'll be watching. We've talked about huge accumulation in the June calls, so I'll definitely be watching that one too. But again, there's nothing wrong with taking profits, in my opinion. TripAdvisor, big amount of calls that went up. I like this name. I like the theme, and again, take a look at the chart. You're going to find something similar. Right, consolidation and a little bit of a move out of this consolidation. Where do I know it's not going to work? If it breaks back inside value below 41. For now, I want to see if this thing can maybe get to 42.5, then up to 43.5, and I'm long some calls. This particular line. All right, we'll call it there. I also traded a little bit of Futu, did a couple other small trades too. You could see, look at the trading activity. When I see momentum in the market, right, I take a couple swings. Right, here was, whoops, I must have done something here. Right, look at my activity yesterday. I didn't see very many opportunities. What do? Try to sit on my hands. I took a lot of targets in the beginning of the day. Right, on Monday I trade a little bit more. Right, if the pitches look good, right, we'll end here on a we'll end on a baseball analogy, right? If the pitches look really good to me, I'm going to swing, right? Again, I'm going to use some other factors, right, to kind of, maybe figure out what type of swing, if I'm going to really swing for the fences or if I'm going to swing for more singles. But if the pitches look good, I'm going to swing, right? And I know, right, you could use this analogy a lot in a lot of different baseball analogies, right? Waiting for your pitch, you could be as patient as possible, right? Nobody's counting strikes on you if you want to be super patient, right? But for me, if the pitches look pretty good and they're coming down the middle, I'm going to take a swing. All right, guys, thanks for watching the video. Have a great night. I'll see you tomorrow.